There is a pain deeper than loneliness, and that is the pain of being with someone who does not truly see you. To sit across from another person, to share your laughter, your time, your effort, only to discover that what they sought was not you, but merely what you could provide. That is the wound of being used. Many of us, in our desire for connection, ignore the small whispers of intuition that try to warn us. We dismiss them because the heart, hungry for love and recognition, often chooses illusion over truth. But if we are to live whole, we must learn to discern the difference between genuine presence and empty possession. Let me take you through 5 unmistakable signs, 5 ways a person reveals that they are only using you and not truly interested in you. At the core of every authentic bond lies a sacred balance, an invisible thread woven between 2 souls. This thread is not measured by how much one can extract from another, nor by how many burdens can be laid upon one set of shoulders, but by the rhythm of mutual giving and receiving. A relationship, whether friendship, love, or even the ties we create in our professional lives, exists much like a living organism. It breathes, it grows, it thrives when there is exchange. But when this balance is broken, when one gives endlessly while the other only takes, the organism begins to decay. The life force that should circulate freely becomes blocked, and what once felt nourishing begins to feel heavy, depleting, and suffocating. Those who use others operate like a well without bottom. You can pour into them all the waters of your energy, your time, your care, your resources, yet no matter how much you give, it will never be enough. They are insatiable because they are not seeking connection but extraction. And because their hunger has no end, the giver is left with exhaustion, drained of vitality, and eventually stripped of self-respect. Imagine, for a moment, a friend who calls you often. At first, it feels good to be needed, to be the one someone turns to in their times of crisis. They borrow money, you lend it. They call late at night, and you answer, because you are kind and you do not want to see them suffer. They ask you to rearrange your schedule, and you accommodate, believing that loyalty means sacrifice. But then one day your own car breaks down. You dial their number, expecting that reciprocity will be natural, that the support you so freely gave will now return to you. But the phone rings endlessly unanswered. Later you receive a message filled with excuses. I was busy. I didn't see the call. I wish I could help, but I can't right now. And as the silence stretches, you realize that when the weight shifts onto your side, they vanish. This imbalance is not mere forgetfulness or poor timing. It is a pattern, one that reveals a deeper truth. Those who feed on others know how to take, but they do not know how to return. Reciprocity requires recognition of the other's humanity. It requires seeing you not just as a tool, but as a person with needs, struggles, and longings of your own. But to the one who uses, you are not fully seen. You are an instrument, valuable only as long as you can play the tune they need. Studies on emotional labor have shown that people who overgive in relationships are far more likely to experience burn, out twice as likely, in fact, compared to those who live in balanced exchanges. And it is not difficult to understand why. When you are constantly expending energy without replenishment, you begin to live in deficit. Your compassion, once vibrant, grows thin. Your strength begins to falter. Even your joy diminishes, because joy requires freedom, and there is no freedom in being endlessly consumed. Those who exploit, on the other hand, rarely feel this fatigue. They are not tired because they are not truly giving. They are consuming, not investing. They are draining, not filling. But why, one might ask, do we allow ourselves to remain in such relationships? Why do we keep pouring into a vessel that does not hold water? The answer lies in the complex nature of the human heart. We want to believe in others. We want to believe that if we show loyalty, patience, and love, the other will awaken to reciprocity. We cling to the hope that someday the person who always takes will finally give. But here is the truth. People reveal themselves not through what they occasionally do, but through what they consistently do. If a pattern emerges where giving only flows one way, then that is not accident, but essence. Consider the story of a woman who tirelessly supported her partner through years of personal struggle. She paid the bills, encouraged his ambitions, tended to his insecurities. She believed that her devotion would one day be mirrored back, that once he found stability, he would show her the same care she had shown him. But when illness came upon her and she was bedridden for weeks, he grew restless and impatient. He resented her for no longer serving his needs. In her time of deepest vulnerability, he withdrew. It was then that she saw the truth. What she thought was partnership had been, all along, a transaction where she was the supplier and he the consumer. The tragedy of being used is not only in the exhaustion it creates, but in the subtle erosion of self-worth. When someone takes more than they give repeatedly, they send you an unspoken message. Your needs do not matter as much as mine. Your struggles are less significant. Your value lies only in what you can provide. And if you are not careful, you begin to internalize this message. You begin to believe that your worth is conditional, dependent on what you offer rather than who you are. Slowly, you forget that you are more than a resource. You are a soul deserving of balance, of care, of love that flows in both directions. True reciprocity is not measured in equality of actions, but in equality of spirit. One friend may bring laughter, the other solace. One may give time, the other wisdom. The form of giving may differ, but the intention must be mutual. When both hearts are invested, the relationship breathes and grows stronger. When only one heart beats, the bond becomes parasitic. It is important, then, to listen to the quiet voice within the intuition that often whispers long before the mind admits the truth. When you leave an interaction feeling emptied rather than enriched, that is a sign. When you find yourself dreading the phone call of a certain friend because you already know it will be another demand, another plea, another crisis where you must come to the rescue, that is a sign. When your generosity feels less like love and more like obligation, that is a sign. To awaken to this truth is painful, for it means admitting that not everyone who stands beside us is truly with us. It requires courage to step back, to set boundaries, to risk being called selfish when, in reality, you are reclaiming your own soul. But without this courage, one remains trapped in the endless cycle of depletion. There is no shame in giving. Giving is the essence of love. But love cannot be sustained where there is only consumption. The well of your soul must be replenished, or it will run dry. Those who take more than they give will never be satisfied, because their hunger is not for connection but for control, for comfort, for the illusion that the world owes them endlessly. And so the call is simple but profound. Learn to see clearly. Pay attention to the patterns, not the promises. Measure not the sweetness of words, but the consistency of actions. Guard your spirit from those who would drain it without ever pouring back into it. For in doing so, you do not become hard, you become whole. You honor the truth that love must flow in both directions, or it is not love at all. There is a profound difference between being cherished for who you are and being tolerated for what you can provide. When a person delights in your presence, you can feel it. You sense it not only in their words, but in the way they lean toward you when you speak, in the light in their eyes when they hear your laughter, in their willingness to share even silence without discomfort. Their attention is not contingent on what you bring to the table. It is a recognition of your existence, a valuing of your being. Such presence nourishes the soul, for it tells us that we are seen not as a function, but as a person. Yet, when someone is using you, that same warmth is absent. What replaces it is a calculated appreciation, not for your spirit, but for your utility. The signs of this dynamic are often subtle at first. Perhaps it is the coworker who greets you warmly only when deadlines loom and your expertise is needed. Outside of these moments, you notice they rarely engage with you, rarely ask about your life, rarely treat you as more than a resource to be tapped into. You are not a colleague to them. You are a tool, a means to an end. Or perhaps it is in the realm of intimacy, where a partner's affection seems strangely tied to what you can provide. Their tone softens when you buy them gifts. Their tenderness surfaces when you solve their problems. Their affection swells when you elevate their status before others. But when you strip away these offerings, their interest evaporates like mist in the sun. The tragedy of this is not only that it wounds, but that it often masquerades as love. The performance can be convincing because those who use others know how to create the illusion of care. They know how to speak the language of intimacy, how to wear the mask of interest. Yet if you look closely, the mask slips, and beneath it you see not devotion but transaction. It is a business deal dressed in the clothing of connection. They are not saying, "I am glad you exist," but rather, "I am glad you exist for me." The human heart, however, longs for something deeper. We are not built to live as commodities, evaluated and accepted based on what we produce or provide. The soul yearns for recognition, for someone to sit with us in the quiet of our being and say, "Even if you gave me nothing, I would still want you here." Without this, we live in a constant state of anxiety, fearing that if we fail to perform, fail to give, fail to be useful, we will be discarded, and that fear corrodes our essence. Think of the countless men and women who have shaped their lives around pleasing others, believing that love must be earned by service. The woman who exhausts herself in acts of caretaking, never allowing her own needs to surface, because she has been conditioned to believe that her worth lies only in how much she can sacrifice. The man who works endlessly to provide, not because he loves his work, but because he fears that if he cannot buy affection, he will not receive it at all. Both live in the shadow of conditional acceptance, trapped in a cycle where their humanity is overshadowed by their function. This dynamic can even extend into friendships. There are people who remember you when they need introductions, favors, or validation, but who disappear in your seasons of silence. You become the stage on which they rehearse their needs, the backdrop for their personal drama. Yet, when you try to share your own story, you realize the conversation quickly shifts back to them. Slowly, you begin to feel invisible, not because you lack substance, but because they are blind to anything that does not serve their immediate desire. The danger in such relationships lies not only in the exhaustion they create, but in the distortion they produce within us. Over time, we may begin to internalize the message that we are not enough as we are. We begin to measure ourselves by the scale of utility, how much we give, how much we offer, how well we serve. And with each passing year, the authentic self recedes further into shadow, while the constructed self, the self that exists only to be useful, takes center stage. This is not living, it is performing for an audience that may never even clap. It is essential to recognize that genuine connection thrives on presence, not performance, The person who loves you does not require you to entertain, to buy, to solve, or to elevate. They are content simply to know you. Think of the comfort of sitting with an old friend where silence is not awkward but nourishing. Think of the partner who listens not to respond or to take, but simply to hold space for your thoughts. In these moments there is no transaction, only being, and it is in being that love becomes real. To illustrate this, I recall a man who once described the depth of his bond with his aging father. The father had long since retired, had little to offer in terms of material contribution, and his health was failing. Yet the son spoke of how he loved simply to sit with him, to hear his voice, to share even quiet evenings without words. "He doesn't give me anything," the son said, "and yet he gives me everything." This is the essence of genuine presence. It cannot be bought, and it cannot be faked. Those who use others, however, are incapable of this. Their affection is conditional, tethered always to what they can extract. When the giving stops, so too does their interest. Their love is like a candle lit only when they need light, extinguished the moment they have no use for it. And so we must ask ourselves, is what we experience with certain people truly love, or is it merely transaction disguised as connection? The pain of realizing that someone values you for your utility and not your essence is sharp. It can shake the foundation of trust, making you question your own judgment. But it is better to awaken to this truth than to live endlessly under its shadow. For in awakening, you reclaim your selfhood. You remind yourself that you are not an object to be used, but a being to be known. What the world desperately needs are relationships rooted not in exchange but in recognition, where two souls come together not to extract but to witness, where the measure of value is not what you provide but who you are. When such bonds are found, they give rise to healing, to growth, to joy that endures even when circumstances strip away material offerings. That is love in its purest form, a love that remains when there is nothing left to give but yourself. Human beings are creatures enchanted by words. We listen eagerly when someone tells us, "You are so important to me," or "I'll always be there for you." Such declarations reach into the tender spaces of the heart, because words carry with them the promise of belonging, of recognition, of love. From childhood, we are soothed by words, lullabies, reassurances, vows whispered in the dark. It is natural, then, that we lean into them, that we take them as truth. Yet the true measure of a soul is never found in language alone. Words are but symbols, fragile vessels, and their weight depends entirely on the substance that supports them. Without action, words are like smoke, visible for a moment, then dissolving into nothingness. Those who use others are often masters of language. They know precisely which words will stir your heart, which tones will ease your doubt, which promises will keep you tethered to them. Their vocabulary is polished, their assurances abundant. "I could never do this without you. You mean so much to me. You can always count on me." But watch closely, and you will notice that when the moment of testing arrives, when circumstances call for sacrifice, for loyalty, for real presence, their words collapse under the weight of reality. Their feet walk elsewhere, their hands remain still, their attention drifts to convenience rather than commitment. This is not merely a small flaw of character, it is a fundamental revelation. Words without action expose a hollowness, a lack of genuine investment. The one who flatters yet abandons, who promises yet disappears, who praises yet neglects, such a person is not interested in you, but in keeping you bound through illusion. They wield language as a tool of manipulation, knowing that as long as you hold on to their words, you will excuse their absence, justify their neglect, and overlook the dissonance between what they say and what they do. I recall a young man who often proclaimed his loyalty to his friends. He would raise his glass in toasts, speak with conviction about brotherhood, insist that nothing was more important than standing by one another. His words painted a picture of devotion so vivid that those around him felt secure in his presence. Yet when a friend fell ill and needed something as simple as a ride to the hospital, this same man was suddenly unavailable. He excused himself with trivial reasons, too busy scrolling through his phone, too preoccupied with tasks that could have waited. The richness of his words was undeniable, but his actions revealed the bankruptcy beneath them. And in that moment the truth became painfully clear. His loyalty lived only in speech, never in reality. We all encounter such contradictions. Perhaps you know someone who constantly speaks of love, but fails to show it in daily tenderness. They tell you they care deeply, but they do not listen when you speak. They declare they will support you, yet they are absent when you are most in need. Or perhaps it is in the workplace, where a colleague praises your contributions in meetings, calling you indispensable, yet in private they do little to back you up when challenges arise. Their admiration becomes a mask that conceals indifference, their flattery a cloak that hides opportunism. The danger lies in how easily we can be seduced by words. We want to believe in them because they echo the desires we carry within ourselves. When someone tells us we are valued, it affirms our longing for connection. When they promise commitment, it feeds our yearning for stability. Yet to build a life on words alone is like constructing a house on sand. Sooner or later the storm will come, and the foundation will reveal its weakness. It is not cynicism to question whether words and actions align. It is wisdom. To demand congruence is not to doubt love, but to honor truth. When someone repeatedly fails to embody their words, when promises dissolve into excuses, when declarations are not anchored in deeds, it is not harsh to recognize that their interest is shallow. It is necessary for your own dignity. Think of the people who do not speak much of loyalty, yet live it daily, the friend who does not shower you with constant declarations of love, but shows up when you are in crisis, the colleague who does not flatter you endlessly, but quietly supports you when you falter, the partner who may not always speak in grand gestures, but whose consistency of action makes you feel secure, safe, and seen. These are the people whose words, though fewer, carry weight, because they are substantiated by a life that reflects them. Their language is not performance. It is affirmation of what already exists in action. The gap between words and actions is not merely a personal failing. It reflects a deeper split within the psyche. When someone relies on language to mask their lack of commitment, they are living in fragmentation. They create an outer persona polished with charm and reassurance, while their inner reality remains selfish, avoidant, and unwilling to sacrifice. This dissonance corrodes not only their relationships but their own integrity. A life lived in contradiction between speech and deed eventually collapses into emptiness, for one cannot lie endlessly to others without also lying to oneself. But let us not only turn outward, let us also look within. Are there places in our own lives where our words outpace our actions? Do we promise what we cannot give, declare what we do not embody, flatter when we do not intend to follow through? It is easy to point to those who use us, yet if we are honest, there may be echoes of the same pattern in ourselves. To live authentically requires that we, too, strive for congruence, that what we speak is a reflection of what we live, and that our promises are few but sacred. When you find yourself in the presence of someone whose life is full of declarations but empty of deeds, you must not cling to their words as if they are enough. You must look with clarity at their patterns, for patterns reveal truth more than poetry does. Interest that is not acted upon is not interest at all. It is performance. Care that is not demonstrated is not care. It is manipulation. Love that is not embodied is not love. It is illusion. And so, while words may be beautiful, while they may soothe and inspire, never forget that actions are the true language of the soul. It is in what one consistently does, not what one repeatedly says, that the heart is revealed. And when actions and words diverge, always trust the actions, for they cannot lie as easily as the tongue. There is a profound truth hidden in the seasons of life. The heart of another is not fully revealed in the light of summer, but in the darkness of winter. It is easy to surround ourselves with companions when joy is abundant, when laughter flows, when the table is full of bread and wine, and our presence offers comfort, entertainment, or gain. But when the winds of hardship arrive, when the fruits of abundance fall away and the cold of suffering sets in, then the veils are lifted and we see who remains. Those who care for you because you are useful will vanish the moment you cease to be useful. Those who saw in you only a benefit will no longer find reason to stay when the benefits dissolve. In this way, adversity becomes not only suffering but revelation. It uncovers the truth of relationships in ways that prosperity never can. Those who use you follow a predictable pattern. They are near you when your life feeds them, when your success reflects well upon them, when your laughter eases their loneliness, when your resources are available to their needs. But the moment your burdens grow heavy, when you can no longer entertain, no longer provide, no longer shield them from discomfort, they retreat. Their absence is often masked with shallow sympathy, a quick message of pity, a casual "I'm sorry you're going through this." Words without weight or sacrifice, but the lack of hand extended, the absence of shoulder offered, tells the deeper story. Their care was never rooted in your being. It was tethered only to their gain. I once spoke with a woman who endured the unraveling of her marriage, a divorce that left her not only grieving but financially strained and emotionally fragile. In the days of her marriage, her home was full of guests. Friends flocked to her table, eager to share in her hospitality, her generosity, the laughter and life she created around her. But when her marriage collapsed and her heart was heavy, when she could no longer host the dinners, no longer travel, no longer provide the comforts she once had, the gatherings disappeared. Many of the friends who had been constant in her seasons of light vanished in her time of shadow. She told me through tears that the emptiness of her home after the divorce was not only due to her husband's absence, but due to the absence of friends who she once believed were family. And yet, as painful as it was, she said something remarkable. In the silence that remained, I discovered who my true friends were. The ones who stayed, few as they were, showed me what love actually means. This is the paradox of pain. It strips away illusion. In joy, we are often surrounded by companions of convenience, people who find our light pleasant, but who cannot endure our darkness. But in pain, when our usefulness wanes, when all we have left to offer is ourselves in raw vulnerability, the pretenders flee and the truth tellers remain. Pain, then, acts as a divine filter. It sifts through the multitude of acquaintances and reveals the rare souls who are not companions of circumstance but companions of truth. It is a sobering realization, yet a necessary one. For many people live long years surrounded by those who do not truly love them, never knowing it until suffering exposes the truth. And when the moment of abandonment comes, the shock can feel unbearable. We ask ourselves, how could they leave me when I needed them most? How could someone who once laughed with me, celebrated with me, praised me, vanish when my heart was breaking? But the answer is not that they changed. It is that their presence in times of joy concealed their true nature. Only hardship revealed the reality that was always there. There is an ancient wisdom in the idea that the night sky reveals stars invisible by day. In the same way, suffering reveals relationships invisible in joy. The stars are the companions of truth, the rare lights that remain when darkness covers everything else. They are not blinded by your struggle, nor do they flee from your burdens. In fact, they often draw closer, knowing that your humanity is most visible in your pain. They remind you, in their quiet loyalty, that you are not valued for what you provide, but for who you are. I remember a man who, after losing his job, spoke of how quickly his social circle shrank. Colleagues who once praised his competence, neighbors who admired his success, even extended family who sought his company, all grew silent when he no longer carried the badge of achievement. Invitations stopped, conversations dried up. Yet one friend who had little to gain and nothing material to offer showed up at his door every week with coffee in hand. "I just wanted to sit with you," he said. "No solutions, no lectures, just presence." That friend's loyalty carried him through the despair more than any words could. It was not the many who mattered, but the one who stayed. The lesson is not to despair when people vanish in your winters, but to recognize it as a form of liberation. Yes, the betrayal wounds, the absence hurts, but what remains after the pretenders leave is a sacred clarity. You see with new eyes who is truly woven into the fabric of your soul and who was merely a passer, by enjoying the warmth of your fire. And with this clarity comes freedom, the freedom to stop investing in illusions, the freedom to honor those who remain, the freedom to stop exhausting yourself for those who were only ever using you. The greatest test of any relationship, whether friendship, love, or kinship, is not how it flourishes in prosperity, but how it endures in adversity. Anyone can stand beside you when the music plays and the wine flows. But who sits beside you when the music stops, who holds your hand when your tears fall, who lifts you when your knees buckle under grief? Those are the ones who love you, not for what you give, not for how you shine, but for who you are in your most fragile state. It is often said that we should be grateful for hardship, for it strengthens us. But perhaps its greatest gift is not the strength it builds within us, but the clarity it gives us about others. Pain strips away the superficial, leaving only what is true. And though it may leave us with fewer companions, those few are worth more than the multitude that once surrounded us. For they are not companions of convenience, they are companions of truth. There are many forms of abandonment, but perhaps the most wounding of all is not when someone leaves you, but when they remain physically present while failing to truly see you. It is a peculiar loneliness, one that strikes even in the company of others, the loneliness of invisibility. When someone uses you, they may sit across from you, they may smile at you, they may even speak words that suggest closeness, but beneath the surface you are not encountered as a soul. You are not perceived in your fullness, in your contradictions, in your fragile and radiant humanity. Instead, you are reduced to a function, a role, a stepping stone toward their own desires. In such a presence, you begin to feel small. Not because you are small, but because the mirror they hold up reflects only fragments of you, fragments that serve their purposes, while the rest of you remains disregarded. It is devastating because human beings are born with an ache to be known. From the earliest cries of an infant, what we seek is not only nourishment but recognition. See me, hear me, acknowledge me. This desire does not fade with age, it simply becomes more complex. We want those closest to us to not only hear our words, but to sense our meaning, to not only observe our existence, but to affirm our uniqueness. To be unseen in a relationship is to suffer a slow starvation of the soul. And when someone uses you, this starvation is precisely what unfolds. Perhaps you tell them about your aspirations, the dreams that live deep within you, fragile and shimmering. You speak with excitement about what you hope to create, what you long to experience. But before the words even leave your lips fully, they are brushed aside. They redirect the conversation to their own ambitions, as if yours are too trivial to matter. Or worse, they belittle your vision. That's unrealistic. That's not important. You'll never manage that. Their dismissal may be subtle or harsh, but the message is the same. Your inner life is unworthy of attention, and each time this happens, a part of you shrinks, or imagine sharing your pain. You speak of a struggle, hoping for empathy, perhaps even just a listening ear. But instead of leaning in, they minimize. They tell you it's not a big deal, that you're overreacting, that others have it worse. Their words do not meet your wound, they trample it. You are left not only carrying your burden, but also questioning whether your feelings are valid at all. And little by little you silence yourself, convincing yourself that what you feel is not worth sharing. This is how invisibility takes root. It does not come all at once, but grows slowly, like a shadow stretching across the landscape of the soul. Over time, you begin to doubt your worth. You measure yourself not by the truth of your being, but by the utility you provide. If you are useful, if you are entertaining, if you are needed, then perhaps you are safe from dismissal. But when you stand in your naked humanity, with dreams, with needs, with fragility, you sense that you are not enough. It is a distortion of selfhood so subtle and yet so damaging that many live under its weight without even realizing it. I once listened to a man describe his experience with a partner who constantly made him feel diminished. Whenever he expressed joy about an accomplishment, she would shift the focus to her own achievements, ensuring his were overshadowed. Whenever he voiced doubt or fear, she accused him of weakness. Over time, he stopped sharing altogether. I felt like a ghost in my own relationship, he said. I was there, but I wasn't seen. This is the essence of being used. You exist not as yourself, but as an accessory to someone else's narrative. And yet, how different it feels when you are truly seen. Genuine interest does not diminish, it magnifies. It does not brush aside your dreams, but honors them, even if they are small or imperfect. It does not minimize your pain, but sits with you in it, allowing you to be human without judgment. True connection makes you feel larger, fuller, more alive. It grants you the freedom to breathe deeply, to exist without pretense, to unfold the many layers of yourself without fear that they will be discarded. Think of the friend who listens intently, not to reply, not to redirect, but simply to understand. Think of the partner who delights in the smallest quirks of your being, who laughs not only at your jokes, but at your joy itself. Think of the rare person with whom silence feels comfortable, who can sit beside you without the need for constant words, because their presence alone affirms your worth. In such moments, you expand. You step into the truth that you are not small at all. You are vast, a soul full of light and shadow, deserving of recognition. The contrast between these two realities, the shrinking of invisibility and the expansion of being seen, is the very heart of discernment in relationships. Those who use you will always, in subtle ways, make you feel diminished. They may not insult you outright. Often their dismissal is more insidious. They cut off your sentences. They shift attention back to themselves. They overlook the details that matter most to you. And slowly, Your inner flame begins to flicker. But those who love you, those who are truly invested in your being, will feed that flame. They will fan it with curiosity, with encouragement, with the sacred act of paying attention. Attention, after all, is the purest form of love. To attend to another, to truly see them, is to say, "You matter." When someone denies you that attention, when they reduce you to a means for their ends, they rob you of the dignity every soul deserves. But when someone grants you their full presence, even for a moment, they give you back to yourself. The danger, of course, is that we can grow accustomed to being unseen. We may begin to accept relationships that diminish us as normal. We may even believe that invisibility is our lot in life, but this is a lie. The truth is that every human being is worthy of recognition, not for what they provide, but for who they are. To accept less is to betray the self. If you find yourself shrinking in the presence of another, feeling invisible, silenced, dismissed, remember this: the problem is not your smallness, but their blindness. They cannot see you because they do not want to, and that is not your burden to carry. Seek instead the company of those who recognize you, who look into your soul and say, "I see you, and I am glad you are here." For in such company you will no longer shrink, you will rise. So, my friends, these are the 5 signs. If you recognize them in your relationships, do not harden your heart with bitterness, but awaken it with clarity. Understand this: being used is not a reflection of your lack of worth, but a reflection of the other's lack of depth. You were not made to be consumed. You were made to be cherished, valued, and seen. And though the world is full of those who would take without giving, it is also full of those who long to meet you, not your wallet, not your skills, not your usefulness, but you. The greatest act of self-respect is to walk away from those who use you, and to make space for those who love you. Do not fear the emptiness that follows, for in that emptiness lies the soil where true connection can finally grow.